Back on Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery and Locked on Sports Atlanta. Head to youtube.com, put Locked on Sports Atlanta in the search browser. Hit that subscribe button when you get there. Also, leave us a comment about what we're talking about. Free and available, all of your favorite podcast platforms. You can find us on Spotify, Odyssey, whatever your favorites are. Download us for free today and leave us a 5-star review. And follow me on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. Now, I'm not comparing these guys physically because we'll talk about that here in just a second. But with Casey Heyward and A.J. Terrell, I think the Falcons, I do think, first off, this is the strength of the Falcons. If you talk about their two corners and their ability to cover on the outside, I think Hayward and I think A.J. Terrell is the strength of this football team. And it makes me think about, when's the last time the Falcons had two really good corners? And I had to go way back. I'm going to tell you that this is the best cornerback duo that they've had since the very early 2000s when they had Ashley Ambrose and Ray Buchanan. So those guys played together in 2000, 2001, 2002, but really especially in 2000, 2001. Ambrose had been a first-team All-Pro corner, with the Bengals, spent a year with the New Orleans Saints, and then came to the Atlanta Falcons. Ray was obviously here for the Super Bowl team. And it's funny, if you look at their numbers, those guys were getting 9-10 interceptions combined a year. Like, think about that now. Think about if you have two corners that get 5 or 6 interceptions apiece. That's crazy talk in today's NFL, but those guys were doing it back then. Now, Hayward and A.J. Terrell are outstanding cover corners, right? A.J. Terrell, second-team All-Pro. He was, I think, graded out the highest cover corner in the NFL last year, right? Nothing but stock going up for A.J. Terrell. Hayward is a guy a little bit older now, right? But a former, second-team All-Pro player. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Terrell getting into the prime of his career. Hayward's still a really good player, but not asked to have to be the number one corner. Now, obviously, look, Ray and Ashley Ambrose were not big guys physically. It was a different time and a different NFL. You look at NFL corners and wide receivers in the late 90s and early 2000s to what it is now, those two guys were pretty small. Ambrose was not very big. Neither was Ray Buchanan. But those guys could get it done. And those guys, you could put those guys on an island on one-on-one and you'd feel good about it. Well, the Falcons have the same thing, except that Hayward and A.J. Terrell are bigger, more physical guys, right? I mean, I'm not telling you that they, are, they're not going to remind you of like a safety or something like that. But both guys are, Terrell's what, 6'1", 200. Hayward's like 5'11", 195, whatever like that. So if there's one thing that the Falcons should be able to count on this season, that is if they can sell out and they have to jailbreak at times to get a pass rush, they can trust the two guys that they have on the outside there. Right? They can trust the two guys there. Now, doesn't fix all your problems because, in today's NFL, your nickel corner plays at least, 60% to 2/3 of the time on your snaps and everything like that. But you feel like that if you need to get into some one-on-one situations. And I thought it was kind of funny that one of the things that was brought up to A.J. Terrell when they were up in New Jersey practicing with the Jets is, you're the modern day Darrelle Revis and Revis Island and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to quite go that far yet with A.J. Terrell because Darrelle Revis was a whole different animal. And ask my buddy Randy Mack about watching his tape and everything like that about how good everybody knew Darrelle Revis was or whatever. But that comparison, right? A guy who can stand on the outside and just shut you down. So no matter what's going to happen with the Falcons, pass rush, their linebackers, is Debo here? What do our safeties look like, right? What's our middle linebackers look like? And our outside guys get and stuff like that. You feel like the real strength of this football team. If I had to pick like one kind of small aspect of what is the Falcons' real strength, it's those two outside corners. And we haven't seen a couple of guys like that in a long, long time. For all the questions about your offensive line, your interior defensive line, can we get home with the quarterback? What is our quarterback play going to look like? Who's going to be at wide receiver? How do the running backs shake out? Right. And we'll talk more tomorrow about, things I'm looking for in this final preseason game. But those two guys on the outside, and that's what Dean Pease wants, right? He's talked about this before. about having the ability to cover man on man on the outside. And Terrell had go look at his numbers analytically from last year. They were ridiculous. How few yards, I think the quarterback rating against AJ Terrell last year was 47. It was something ridiculous like that. And Hayward's a guy who, look, he's talked about coming in here, being part of something, working with the guy like AJ Terrell, getting a little bit more invigorated, having some competition. He's also not being asked to be a number one guy anymore, so he didn't have to worry lining up against, the best wide receiver. He'll let AJ Terrell handle that. But Casey Heyward is, I don't want to undersell him, but he's a really good running mate. If you want to use, Michael and Scotty, he's a really good second piece to have out there. So, look, your secondary is also only as good as what your pass rush is, right? Let's not fool and kid ourselves. You can't have corners trying to cover for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds, right? While quarterbacks can just do whatever they want and pick you apart out there, right? At some point, you have to get home. But you feel like, though, that if Falcons have to get creative in how they dial up pressure, if they can't get home with just 4 guys or their outside guys or anything like that, and they have to start blitzing and they have to sell out a little bit to get the quarterback, you feel like you're pretty set on that outside. And I will tell you, it's been 20 years since we've seen a tandem like this, right? I mean, there haven't been, the Dunta Robinsons and the Desmond Trufants. They never really had that kind of running mate that went along with him, right? They never had that secondary guy, Brett Grimes, for a season or two, whatever, but wasn't much out there. This is a legitimate cornerback duo. And really, when you look around the league, I'm not sure how many teams have a better duo that they can trot out there than what the Falcons have. So we talk about under the radar signings and moves that the Falcons have made, things like that. I'm really hoping that Casey Heyward is one of those guys that has a big year and he can be part of the future for however long. I'm not saying Casey Heyward's going to be here for the next 5, 6, 7 years, but could Casey Heyward be here for the next 3 years and be a part of getting this defense to where we want, to what Dean Pease has been preaching, that we want to be a top 10 defense. We want to be in the upper half. We want to be an upper echelon defense, right? And in today's NFL, if you have cover corners in today's NFL, it's such a valuable commodity, right? That's why those guys are such high draft picks, right? We just saw the Detroit Lions a couple of weeks ago. Jeff Okudah was the number 3 pick overall. Number 3 overall in a draft, by the way, that, what was it, Chase Young, and I forget who was ahead of him in that draft. So think about, the 2 guys that went ahead of him and what their stead was. Okudah was the number 3 pick in the draft, right? So there is a massive premium on corners, and you have to give Falcons credit. This is probably the best duo we've seen since Ambrose and Buchanan in the early 2000s. And that was a pretty darn good, that was a pretty good group that we had out there. So if there is one strength for this football team, it's certainly being able to cover on the outside. If you can't get home with a regular pass rush, you can sell out because you trust those 2 guys to cover wide receivers. All right, well, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day. Make A to Z with Mark Zinno your second listen every day. Mark's back talking all things Atlanta sports. Check out his show. He is free and available on our YouTube page as well, Locked On Sports Atlanta. Subscribe today, our fast-growing community. Thank you so much for all of that. We are also free and available to download on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Odyssey. Leave us a 5-star review. And, of course, follow me on my personal Twitter page. That would be at JMCH316. Back tomorrow. We'll prep for the Falcons game on Saturday as we wrap up the week. Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.